This is the story of a project of an unusual kind for a local authority. It demonstrates the inherent flexibility of the English system of local government to undertake and run efficiently enterprises of many different types. In this case, the public telephone system in our city, of which I am proud to have been the manager and engineer for the last 20 years. As my task in life, like that of telephone managers everywhere, is to let others speak, I will say no more than thank you to Mr. Sidney Clayton Gower, my senior equipment engineer, for the inspiration which infuses its presentation, to Mr. Walter Garton of Garton Film Productions for his advice, patience, and competent camera work in coping with a somewhat protracted assignment, and to Doreen Jones, who is one of our telephonists, herself personifies the principal contact between ourselves and our many customers. It is her voice that now narrates this story.
Many cities have their telephone house, but this building in the city of Kingston upon Hull is unique in that it is owned not by the Crown, but by the city with 3 crowns. Hull is proud to have the only municipally owned telephone undertaking in the country. And sooner or later, strangers to Hull, perhaps after making their first tuppenny call from one of its green and cream kiosks, want to know why Hull is the only city in the country which has a telephone system not controlled by the post office. At the turn of the last century, an act was passed in Parliament permitting municipal authorities to start a local telephone service if licensed by the Postmaster General. Under this statute, the Hull Corporation Telephone Department provides the service for the city and a roughly semicircular area of the East Riding, within a radius of 10 miles. This area stretches eastwards to Heddon and the Salt End Industrial Area, northwards to Beverley, the ancient market town, and in the west to the southern reaches of the Yorkshire Wolds. The first corporation telephone headquarters in Hull were opened in 1904 in a converted public baths in Wincolm Lee, with a staff of 30 and just over 1,000 subscribers. There was fierce competition from the National Telephone Company until this was purchased by the Postmaster General in 1912. The company's local headquarters in Whitengate became the corporation's in 1914, when the government sold the ex-company system in the Hull area to the corporation for over £192,000. The Wincolm Lee Exchange was converted to automatic working in 1924. Between the Great Wars, nearly all the corporation telephones were made automatic, and despite a rapid rise in the number of subscribers, by 1961 every telephone in the area was connected to one of the 15 automatic exchanges shown on the map, 7 within the city boundary and 8 outside. These 15 exchanges fit into the national dialing system through the medium of 2 GPO switching centres in Hull. One, a long-established manual trunk exchange in the head post office, and the other, a new automatic trunk switching centre, erected on a site adjoining Telephone House and built during the same period as the subject of our film, and named appropriately Anson, after the Hull-born pioneer of automatic telephony. The premises in Mitongate were busier than ever, coping with the many new special services and inquiries due to the rapidly expanding system, despite the fact that all subscribers could by now dial their calls. The 999 emergency service must remain on duty at all times. It is well known that at Christmas time Santa Claus can be dialed at Hull, but throughout the remainder of the year other services are provided by means of magnetic recording. Hull Phonodiary is the guide to local attractions. Teledisc provides all the very latest pop tunes. Each weekday morning, Teddy Chef gives housewives a daily recipe. The weather service gives reports from the coast during the summer, and in winter provides around-the-clock service on local road weather conditions. Further congestion was apparent in the Mitongate reception room, and at the most only a handful of customers could receive attention to their queries in reasonable comfort. Although the number of staff had increased tremendously over the years, the same crowded canteen in the basement had to cope. Thus it was obvious that a new headquarters, with an exchange to allow the automatic telephone system to expand into 6 digits, was imperative. This project called for a tremendous amount of planning and the investment of some £1.25 million. Across the road from the Mitongate Exchange is one of the overflow buildings. Here, the executive staff of the telephone department held almost 200 development committee meetings under the chairmanship of Mr. H.V.J. Harris, the telephone manager. Mr. S.C. Gower is the senior equipment engineer. Deputy telephone manager is Mr. C.A. Price, and Mr. F.D. Milsom is chief clerk and commercial assistant. Mr. N.H. Groom is executive engineer for accommodation and construction, and to complete the team there are Mr. A. Johnson, equipment planning engineer, Mr. E.R. Chapman, maintenance engineer, and Mr. W.R. Knights, lines engineer. Although major proposals of the Development Committee have to be submitted to the City Council for final approval, it is here, at the Hull Guildhall, that the majority are finally approved, at a monthly meeting of the Corporation Telephones Committee. In the centre, at the top of the table, the chairman, Alderman R.E. Tennyson, heads the committee of 14. In the early stages of the Telephone House project, Mr. Andrew Rankin, the city architect, who was to be responsible for the new building, was on hand to answer any queries which members might raise. Here, the telephone manager was able to make sure that any details which the Telephones Committee had brought up would be incorporated in the final building. Soon the results of these meetings were to manifest themselves to the general public on a city centre site at the corner of Ann Street and Carr Lane. This was January 1961, and the site, which had been badly blitzed during the war, had for many years been used as a car park. Before the pile drivers had finished their work, nearly 600 piles had been driven 60 feet into the clay subsoil. April 1961, and without any large placards to advertise the fact, it was obvious that a building connected with the telephone service of Hull must be in progress behind the hoardings. The new building was to be L-shaped in plan, one wing being for offices and the other for apparatus, giving a total working area of 77,000 square feet. On a blustery day, Monday the 18th of September 1961, the Lord Mayor of Hull, Alderman K. Turner JP, and his lady arrived at the site for the laying of the foundation stone before a small audience of members of the Telephones Committee, staff of the Telephone Department and representatives of the contractors. Meanwhile, cable drums, which had been temporarily stored on waste ground adjoining Queen's Gardens, were rolled into action, and work on diverting the vast network of underground cables to the new headquarters could commence. These drums, some weighing 3 tons, needed heavy tackle and plenty of room for manoeuvre. Much of the work was carried out at night or on Sunday mornings in order to avoid traffic hold-ups. By February 1962, much of the main construction work was well underway, and a fair idea of the final appearance of the building could be obtained. There was a time when building in Hull had to be restricted in height because of the poor bearing quality of the ground. But modern building methods enable contractors to ignore this, and architects, consequently, have a freer hand in their designing. These rooms at the top were the last to be finished, but further down some rooms were almost ready for occupation. Pre-planning for the cable routing ensured that there would be no last-minute hacking away of concrete to provide access between floors. In such a vast building, eventually to house all kinds of electronic apparatus, ventilation and heating are just as important for the equipment as for the staff, and this system is the finest obtainable. The tarpaulin-covered manhole is in fact the point at which the underground cables are physically connected to the new headquarters. Conditions for working in the hole are as ideal as one can make them within the limits of this situation. And it is here that the skill and infinite patience of the cable jointers were put into practice. Before work was completed, over 64,000 wire joints were made, and each tested for continuity and reliability. Just imagine trying to find a fault here. From the manhole, the cables were passed through this 84-way duct entry into the basement of Telephone House itself. From the basement, the multitude of wires emerge to be connected to the main distribution frame. And initially, on this frame, there are almost 250,000 joints, fuses and connections to provide for subscribers in the central area of the city. Before the equipment for the new exchange was purchased, the Telephones Committee at the Guildhall considered tenders from several leading suppliers, including in this instance a Dutch firm. The city treasurer was present to advise the committee on financial aspects. The successful tender for the exchange switching equipment was from Standard Telephones and Cables Limited, and in January 1963 the equipment began to arrive on site. Although the work on the underground cabling was by now completed, a further 80 miles of cabling were necessary in order to connect subscribers' telephones to the exchange apparatus. This may sound a bit hackneyed, but if the wires in the cables were joined in one long length, they would stretch from Hull to Sydney, Australia and back 3 times. The racks now in position house almost 20,000 selectors of various kinds, and another 5 million soldered joints were made before the equipment was operational. Nearly 200,000 possible ways of getting a local number. Who said wrong number? The Telephone Committee delegated a subcommittee, one of its tasks being the choosing of furnishings and fabrics with a pleasing colour scheme. One aim of this subcommittee was to utilize all the latest advances in interior decoration and at the same time maintain a balance between good taste and modern design in the completed decor. Mr. Wright, the Deputy City Architect, was called upon for advice on this occasion. By the start of 1964, the switchboards for the new auto-manual exchange were ready to be installed. They are contemporary and cordless. Close by is the supervisor's new desk, but at that time she was still at her old desk in the congested Mitongate premises, helping to keep the telephone service operating smoothly. The best half-crown's worth in Hull, as far as reading matter is concerned, is surely the local telephone directory. And as work advanced on the new headquarters, it became a race against time for us at Mitongate to carry out the 23,000 telephone number alterations in order that the printers could go ahead with the new directory to meet the deadline of 30th of May, when the new Civic Exchange started working. Let's just drop into the printers for a moment and watch the new directories being made. This machine was printing the list of businesses and professionals on tinted paper. This section alone contains 18,000 entries, divided into 811 classifications. Every subscriber received a copy. Altogether, 90,000 directories were issued, 16,000 being for use in GPO exchanges throughout the country. It will be even more next year. After the directories left Hull Printers Limited, 12 men with 4 vans worked 4 weeks to deliver them to 50,000 addresses in the area. of May 1964, the day for bringing the new exchange into action, the cutover had arrived. Mr. Wayne of Standard Telephones and Cables Limited said, "This is the greatest contract in magnitude that my company has been privileged to undertake for your telephone department. It is really the culmination of many years in which we have cooperated in the expansion and modernization of the telephone network. As the cut-over time drew near, Alderman Tennyson told his audience that the new exchange would pave the way for bringing Hull into the national system of trunk dialing. As the white lights go out one by one, showing that old sections of the telephone system were being withdrawn, the appearance of the green light was the signal for Alderman Tennyson to pull out the insulator tabs, which effected the bringing into operation of lines for 50 subscribers. And then, working as quickly as possible, further insulated tabs were removed, bringing in another 7,000 lines. On this particular occasion, there was no penalty for depositing litter. Immediately the cutover was completed, operators were kept busy dialing the subscribers to remind them of their new telephone numbers. On the same floor, the new central fault control for the whole system was now in operation. On the fourth floor is the auto-manual exchange. The supervisor at her desk can, with the aid of this new console, see at a glance the exact commitments of her staff and marshal us to deal with any overloading of calls, almost before they occur. To help us give the speediest possible service, the old dials have been eliminated, and now we can dial much faster by pressing a series of buttons. Perhaps now would be a good time to look back at the old manual exchange and see how dramatically conditions have changed in so short a time. An important facility for general medical practitioners is the transferring of telephone calls to fit in with the doctor's rota system. The display board here needed very close inspection, but in the new exchange, this display panel can easily be seen by each operator from her switchboard position. For communication between departments, a new pneumatic tube system is used. A dial is preset to the desired destination. Any faults reported can be quickly written on a message form, which is then instantly dispatched to the room containing the line testing panel. One man to whom the cut-over day must have brought memories of the old days and conditions was Joe Lister, who had just completed 50 years' service with the department. At the far side of the manual exchange are the rooms housing the recording gear, now no longer having the appearance of being tied together with string and sticky tape. Before my time, operators made a separate written record of every call, local and trunk, and little imagination is needed to appreciate what a mass of work would have to be undertaken if every one of Hull's 50 million or more calls a year had still to be recorded in this primitive manner. For many years, however, electromechanical counters have been installed at exchanges to record local calls, being periodically read for accounting purposes. Even this method had grown into a time-consuming clerical task, and at Civic Exchange a new system, recording calls both STD and local on magnetic drums, has been introduced. This dispensing commences with the taking and writing down of visual readings by automatically punching a paper tape, which will be fed directly into a computer for preparing the monthly and quarterly bills. All STD calls are charged in twopenny units, the number per call depending upon its duration and distance. But local calls are not timed. Neither are they counted if you rent a line at the unlimited tariff, and even if you do not, the total chargeable each year is reduced by a generous free call allowance. In the heating chamber, the use of oil-fired boilers helps to keep this part of the building as clean as any other. And some of the boiler control equipment is reminiscent of a modern power station. Next to the boiler room stands the emergency generator, which in fact received its baptism of fire within a week or two when there was a power failure in the area, lasting for over half an hour. At the Mitengate Exchange, the canteen was tucked away in the basement, but here the staff can enjoy their meals on the top floor of the new building, and a full catering service is provided. "1964 was the Diamond Jubilee year of the Kingston-upon-Hull telephone department, and the culmination of 4 years' work on building and the installation of equipment in Telephone House came on Friday the 23rd of October, when the High Steward of the city, the Right Honourable Lord Morrison of Lambeth, arrived. Other visitors took their places on the 5th floor in the lecture hall, which is reserved for more switching apparatus under future development plans. The Lord Mayor of Hull, Alderman Fred Hammond JP, welcomed Lord Morrison and invited him to perform the official opening ceremony. Lord Morrison mentioned how at an early age he became a telephone operator, and for that reason had always taken a keen interest in the progress of the Hull undertaking. The ribbon between the miniature telephone poles was cut to unveil by remote control a commemorative plaque in the reception hall on the ground floor. After the opening ceremony, a luncheon was held in the Guildhall to celebrate the occasion. This silver plate, inscribed with an illustration of Telephone House, is a valuable addition to the city's collection. Sir Thomas Spencer, chairman of Standard Telephones and Cables Limited, asked the Lord Mayor to accept it as a gift from his company to the city. The Lord Mayor's chain of office dates back to 1564. With this presentation, 400 years of progress in the city are now suitably recorded. Telephone House is a symbol of the faith which the people of Hull have in their own telephone system. May it continue to prosper in the years that lie ahead.